Hi, welcome. On this video, I want to take a few minutes to respond by way of trainer, goes by the name of Dylan Jones. And this ties into, again, I've done some recent videos by way of Larry Crone, who approaches dealing with a aggressive dog in a very similar way, by way of using a bite suit, okay, to allow a dog that's already aggressive to express control. I want to talk about this because, again, understand that when you look at the information out there in the dog training world with trainers who are looking to establish change, okay, you see, especially by way of the confused, balanced dog training community, you see some of this. And again, I'll talk about why this is very problematic. You want to steer clear of this idea of things, and I'm going to talk about why. Now, again, I took a little bit of a social media break. Back at it, and so this is a great video, okay, to get back into this, into responding to, the information that's being put out on social media with these trainers. Some of these trainers are very popular; they got a big following, but that's absolutely meaningless, okay? Based again on just look at the state of the dog training world. It's a complete train wreck. There's so many things happening. Dogs being destroyed, trainers taking the hit, dog owners taking the hit. So again, I talk about, and again, this is a good example talking about in terms of the role of influence. Okay, I talk about that being dialed into the relationship the right way, being dialed into a dog's state of mind, and how to start to change the intent, okay, of a dog in terms of how they're seeing the owner, how they're seeing other people, and in terms of moving forward with meaningful change. But again, this goes into this whole thing about one of the big themes here is about relationship. Dogs are social animals, so your role is absolutely critical when it comes to change itself. Now, in terms of this, okay, again, you see this individual here standing here with the bite suit on. Over here, you know, this says socialization session one, okay, with human aggressive dog Ollie. And interesting comments here, because here's the thing is that people look at this, and even, those who aren't even dog trainers, when you look at this, you just intuitively say there's something not right here. Like, this type of permissive, passive approach to dealing with an aggressive dog. Now we'll talk about this because here's the thing: it's not about being over the top as well. You have to be careful when you're, interacting with an aggressive dog. And I talk about some of the themes here. Again, you look at the videos. I encourage you to check them out on my part of my Flipping the Script series. And one of them in particular is helpful. A couple I put out there. Tom Davis video I have out where Tom Davis gets redirected on, okay, by way of an aggressive dog when he's correcting the dog, as he's engaging in the game of tug, right? Now think about here you get the bite suit, okay, but allowing the dog to express control and then trying to correct the dog, okay, intercept that express state in that moment when the dog is already expressing control, over an object, over a person, and then you get redirected on, which is a very bad situation. But understand this is about it making sense to the dog. Okay, making sense means that one of the big themes I talk about is your role in terms of being proactive, so that you're intercepting. Okay, we'll talk about this. The dog's stinking thinking, and this is where the whole dialed in part of it really is important, because when I talk about stinking thinking, it's being dialed into the fact you're dealing with a relationship problem. Okay? That's the reason you go into a trainer in the first place, because you're dealing with, say, a dog that's become aggressive, has already bitten somebody. So therefore, okay, your role in terms of how you're advocating, okay, how you're intercepting, okay, that level of stinking thinking is important. Okay, it's important in the sense of, of being able to intercept those express states, just as, and here's the important part, just as the dog is starting to fixate, okay? And one of the questions is, well, how do you know? Like, how often do you, are you intercepting a dog's state of mind towards, say, other people? Dog's already become aggressive. Well, at first, a lot, okay? But it's done in a way in which it makes sense to the dog. It just takes the form of just a nudge, okay, just a little nudge, just as the dog's eyes are starting to move towards, say, you're in a situation towards other people, just a nudge. And so what you're keying up on is it changes the dog's focus towards you, and you'll see that inwardness. Okay, if you watch my videos, how I'm doing it, so you're consistently just nudging. You're not, correcting that way. We're not, because a correction. Understand, a correction really represents that you're waiting too long. Okay, you're correcting. You're waiting. Some of these trainers use the word loading. The dog overly fixating. You don't want to be doing that. So even here, a good example of the difference between how I would be dealing with this and what I advocate is this dog right here, because this is like 1 second into this video. Okay, you're dealing with a human aggressive dog. This trainer should have this dog in a intentional way on the leash, and this dog should be right beside the owner with I call it a baseline, but a level of intentional control over the dog that immediately starts to, that interplay, it starts to have an effect. Okay, because it's that level of control where the dog's stinking things are going to start to be kicking up, and the trainer should be turned at an offset angle. Okay, should be turned slightly, say towards the goalpost over here, or even further this way, so that peripherally the dog is aware that individual is there, and it's going to kind of tempt the dog. The dog's thinking things is going to key up anyway, and that's when you start to, again, by way of corresponding with, again, intentional control happen at the same time, and you're starting to just nudge a little bit, starting to turn the other way. But again, distance is important too. You have to kind of have that sense of how close in you should be. Because understand that, here's the thing, you have a dog that's hit that aggressive level, just a level of intentional control done the right way is going to start the dog's going to start to not like it. Okay, so you don't have to necessarily even be nudging. You just have to start to, that interplay, you have to start to bring your role into the right frame. Okay, but understand that influence is important, because it is what starts to change the perceptions of the dog. Because what the message they're sending is, hey, I own everything. Okay, everything comes through you as the owner, the relationship side of things, and so you're not going to think about people that way. Okay, you're going to relax. Okay, and that's where the relaxation starts to happen. So here, but you have to intercept. Okay, those expressed states. Here, that's not the theme. Okay, the theme here is this type of, think of it like I use the parenting example. It's like just ignoring the bad behavior of the selfish child. The selfish child just having a massive temper tantrum and outburst, and you're just oh, if I just ignore it, it'll go away. Not necessarily. Okay, I mean, it doesn't mean that. And here's the problem with dog training world too, because people will take, and this is what these trainers will do, because they're so permissive, and there's so much about bribing dogs, and they're not even taking, even in terms of agreeableness, because we're going to talk about this, letting this dog express, the dog's going to seem better in certain moments, all only because you let that dog control, allowing the dog to gain control, express control, gives them a level of satisfaction. Okay, but understand you're dealing with a relationship problem. Okay, just think about selfish child that's allowed to get their own way. They'll seem kind of satisfied, and yeah, they're fine in those moments because they got their own way. Okay, and what's happening in the dog training world, they're taking certain moments out of context and trying to package those up to say, oh, that just automatically means you can take what you see at face value. Those moments that appear better at face value to mean that the relationship's getting better, and that's totally wrong. Okay, and how you can tell it's wrong is because if you put the relationship to the test at all points of the relationship, you'll see that you're still dealing with a relationship problem. This is why people get blindsided all the time, to say, oh, I thought things were better. I had certain moments like this happening, letting the dog express control, and then someone got bit later that day or the next week, or things are still happening, and then people are in denial. And it's so easy to say, oh, we tried, but there's something wrong with the dog. No, there's everything wrong with the approach, and the relationship actually didn't get better. You just took those moments out of context. So understand that it's important to understand what's going on here with these trainers, because, and the problem here is that this permissive bribery-based idea of things, it feeds into, really think about this, it feeds into the owner's permissiveness. Okay, I understand the reason I go to a trainer for help in the first place, because their role is misaligned. Okay, they're connecting, and you'll see it at a highly emotional level with the dog. They have that type of attachment issue going on. The dog's gained this incredible amount of control, and so their emotions are playing a role. So they'll be drawn towards this type of idea of things because it plays into their thinking. Okay, it leads them to believe is I don't have to take control. I don't have to be a leader that way. You know, I don't have to engage that way. I can trust these moments that are being packaged up by these trainers, and that's where people get into trouble. Okay, and they'll buy into it. In fact, in many cases, they'll keep dealing with a relationship problem because there's a fear. Okay, and these trainers will instill that fear into them because they'll say, well, anything outside the parameters of this permissive idea of things is abusive. Okay, and this is where I talk about this whole issue of these trainers who don't even reconcile the reactions of dogs properly to the relationship, which means that certain reactions will be happening. Say, for example, I just talked about bringing this dog into a level of intentional control, and that dog's going to kick up a certain level, and there's ways to minimize that. Okay, keep it leveled out, but then trainers say, oh, the dog's being abused right away. They'll start talking, oh, the dog is kicking, the dog's being abused, because their whole framework is misaligned. Okay, their whole framework is based on this superficial, appearance-based idea of things that's totally out of context. Okay, but they're playing all sides. Understand these trainers are playing all sides of the fence here. Okay, they're able to do that and get away with it only because they're exploiting certain relationship dynamics. Okay, and people buying into it, and that's what they're doing. So this is some hard information I put out, but understand something. If you really want to fix your dog, you really want to make sure that you get the trust back, and you're not going to get blindsided. Pay attention to the information I'm putting out. Okay, it's absolutely 100%. Go watch my videos on my YouTube channel. I deal with aggressive dogs, but you have to understand that these trainers are putting out not good information. So, and I spent a lot of time talking through this. I understand people will complain, "Oh, Dale, you talk," but that's the whole point. It makes no sense. Think about what I'm saying. It makes no sense to do something unless you know why you're doing it. So often people are just showing up. Someone's got a bodysuit on, and the dog, and then you have no idea. Like you're just trusting that this can be trusted without any context, without understanding the relationship side of things. That's why I talk through it to understand. Okay, it's context here. Okay, what's your role? Okay, you have to get dialed in properly here to not just the problem, but the solution. So here, I'm going to play some of this video. So here, just the setup is totally different. Okay, but this trainer is like, and these trainers will do that. They'll say, oh, just let the dog, this will overcome it. Just let the dog get it out of their system. That's not good. It's like a selfish child. Just let them get it out of their system. Let's just feed into the problem here. If the dog, basically the idea is, well, if the dog understands it can't get their own way, can't get anywhere with, biting somebody or expressing control, that's a danger. Understand, those are dangerous waters. Those are dangerous waters to be in, okay? Because you're not actually intercepting that state of mind, okay? You're letting the dog gain fulfillment, express through it, okay? Those are dangerous waters. So the comment over here is on the money. The person asks, like, do you have a certain criteria, right over here, do you have a certain criteria you're looking for when finally telling the dog that behavior is off the table? You know what I'm saying? Like, what's the criteria? Well, the same thing. I talk about something. Look at my Facebook page. This goes to the heart of the issue in the dog training world. What's the criteria these trainers are using to establish that the perception of dogs are changing the right way within the framework of superficial responses? I call it the question of the century. None of these trainers can answer it because they're not dialed in the way I talk about. They're not dialed into what defines a training or a process or the role of influence in this case. They're not dialed into any of that. So, let's play some of this, but understand the problem here. This is not the path to be taken.
You don't have to kneel down, but kind of like, hey, buddy.
Hi, bud. Hi.
Right there, taking the hit. This dog's just roaring in, slamming in. I mean, and there's no interception from, this is just that permissive, just let the dog express.
Hi.
And say this ain't normal. I mean, this isn't normal. This is about relationship. And I talk about this all the time. This is why when I walk into a situation, and you'll see this, in fact, I talk about this a lot. It's about your starting, but it's about when I enter say a home environment, it begins. Which means that when I say it begins, it means that I'm dialing that owner into the dog's level of thinking right away. I'm starting to affect change through starting to intercept, because you have to get that owner keyed up on their role. You don't want to leave them in a reactionary or passive role, because it matters. Everything matters. And so here, this is that permissive, let the dog express, put the bodysuit on. This is ridiculous. He's petting on the dog.
Good thing we got the jacket on.
Because this isn't about, the themes I talk about are absent here. Okay? I talk about, control. Just a baseline of control. We bring this dog into control. And you always tell, because it's about, I talk about what's revealed, okay, through what's reasonable. Okay? Dogs are social animals, We talk about strength and weakness defined through nature, but, the leash is a connection point. But it's going to reveal the state of the relationship through a dog's level of agreeableness to, to how you're expressing control. It doesn't mean you're over the top. Understand a lot of these trainers. So understand, when you encounter trainers out there that, are not dialed in the way I talk about, you'll see their language starts to get inflammatory right away. Okay, because they're not dialed in the right way, right? They'll start to push against, right? Start to say, oh, because for them it's just about gaining agreeableness with the dog, just about. But it's again, it's all about context here. That's why dogs can look happy and look okay before someone takes the hit, before someone gets bit, right? Because control gives comfort. Okay, understand, just like selfishness, right? So understand that it's very deceptive.
Just a little nip.
Just a little nip. Talk about just a little nip. I mean, if she didn't have that bodysuit on, that'd be a trip to the hospital. Okay, that'd be a trip to the hospital. And she'd be, rolling around on the ground screaming, and then blood, right? And I thought, yeah, it's not a good, this is so ridiculous. And celebrating that. And that dog started to get keyed up here again. Okay, just from them coming together like that.
Hey, bud.
See?
Hi.
See, it's about control, right? Control. It came together, a little tap, and that dog's already gearing up again. Starting to, go up on its hind legs here, right? See? Starting to bite. Same thing, control. And then going over, so if you pay attention too, you'll see the whole supply source thing happening with an aggressive dog. They have primary supply, secondary supply. It's like a narcissist supply. You watch their head swivel, okay, how they fixate. You'll see it. Supply in and through the owner. Then another dog. It could be another human. If you take them off the leash, I have an exercise I do with people, not the off leash part of the method, where people are, gathered around and they're, interacting with the dog, bringing the dog into a level of control, level of influence. Very reasonable. But right away, it's interesting. As soon as that dog comes off the leash, that dog, if there's a circle of people, that dog will immediately go to, I call the weak link. That dog will immediately go to the person that they've gained access through in terms of expressing control. And then, but interesting, when that person starts to advocate, that dog will start to, change the direction, the focus to a secondary supply source, then a third. Okay, it's just, you see it. It's so interesting. So here, but this dog went over to the ball. All right, started going after the ball.
Oh, at least you showed it.
See, control, right?
Not really, it's just like, boy.
Good boy.
So now just walk there.
But see, same thing here. It's like tossing that ball, saying, but if you had the dog on the leash, that dog, because you'll see, it's interesting through the game of, you say you're using a ball, the dog has a high level of control over, in the relationship. And you start to introduce some control, even with, like, say, a 30-foot line with ball play, that dog will shut down. That dog doesn't want to participate anymore when a dog is at a high level like that, because the dog is like all or nothing. And that's another sign. You'll see it's like, wow, what is this dog shot? I just attached a 30-foot line. I'm barely putting any control through that line at all. If I tell people when you're switching over, is to not put a lot of control over it as you're switching over. But you'll see dogs that have a high level of control relationship. They don't want to play, it takes them takes a little bit to get them back to ball play. But you'll see that too, because it's like the all or nothing thing. That's why you bring a dog in on a board and train that's aggressive, they'll stop eating their food for a couple, 2 or 3 days. Like that food aggression, all that is tied into everything. And then you have to hand feed them a little bit, but you'll see the change. You know how they go from the back of the crate, they start to center again, they forward aggress first. You'll see it, but see, understand these trainers are not dialed into any of those realities because their whole framework isn't based on the reality of the relationship and the role. So again, I'll stop it here. Just want to key up on this is absolutely the wrong approach. Okay, you're in dangerous waters here. Okay, if you're truly looking to change course with an aggressive dog, pay attention. I put out other videos, the Larry Crone ones of the bite suit. See, it's all the same thing. See this information out there, really bad information. Steer clear. If you're looking for how to resolve an issue with an aggressive dog, check out my YouTube channel. I got lots of great information on that. You need to be intentional. You want to keep it safe, and you certainly don't want to get blindsided thinking that these moments that are being packaged up this way actually represent change. Thanks for watching.